3 risk to reward. Now, if you don't know what that means, let's say that you got in here on this entry where this line is, it means that you're risking the ratio of 1 to get the reward of 3. So, an example could be you're risking 1% to make 3%. So, if you hit the stop loss up here at the end of this red zone, then you would lose 1%. But if it comes down and hits the end of this green zone, you would make 3%. So this is an example of a 1 to 3 risk to reward trade. So regular compounding, let's just kind of go through an example of this. Let's just use this example of a 1 to 3 risk to reward. And let's say that you're risking 1% to make 3%. So here's how it would play out. So trade 1, let's just say that you lose. Okay, you're going to lose 1%. And you're going to be, overall, you're going to be negative 1%. Second trade, you also lose. You're going to lose another 1%, right? Because you're risking 1% on each trade. So now you're overall at negative 2%. Third trade, though, you actually win. And, since you're risking 1 to make 3%, on the third trade, you win and you make 3%. So now you're up 1% overall. Fourth trade, you also win. So you won another 3%. Now you're up 4% overall. Fifth trade, you lose 1%. Now you're up 3%. And the sixth trade, you win. So you win another 3%. And now you're up 6% overall. So through these 6 trades, with 3 wins and 3 losses, you're actually up 6% overall. And this is just, regular compounding, risking, 1% of your account to make 3% on each trade, right? With a 1 to 3 risk to reward. So let's look at the exact same situation, exact same trades. So there's a 6%. But using asymmetric compounding, okay? So we're still going to be risking 1 to make 3. We're risking 1% in this example to make 3%. So let's just go through this, and then I'll explain exactly how it works and why it works this way. So trade 1, you lose, right? You guys remember that? We lost the first trade. So we're down 1%. We're risking 1%, right? Second trade, you also lose. You risk 1%. Now you're down 2%. Third trade, you win. So you make that 3%, and you're up 1% overall now. But here's where it makes a difference. The fourth trade, you also win. You actually make 12% on that one trade, so you're up 13% overall now. Fifth trade, you lose the 1% that you're risking, so you're back down to 12. And the sixth trade, you win 3%, and you're up 15 overall. So you made 15% in these 6 trades using asymmetric compounding as opposed to only 6% with the regular way of compounding. And I'm going to explain the difference now between the two. So you're probably like, wow, that looks like magic. Like, what is going on? And I'm going to show you guys how this form of asymmetric compounding, although sometimes can be psychologically hard to trade, can definitely give you an edge just in your risk management side of your system. So let's go through how exactly this works. So all you do is you're simply going to take all of the profit or some of the profit from your winning trade and risk it plus your base risk on the next trade. Now, that's probably a lot of words for you. Let me break that down and explain it just by showing you an example, okay? So let's say that we have this example of a risk to reward of 1 to 2, and we'll make it simple. We'll say that we're risking 1% to make 2%, okay? So this is just a different situation than the last one. Obviously, risking 1% to make 2% as well. So trade 1, let's say we lose. We're going to lose that 1% that we're risking. Trade 2, though, we win, right? Okay, so we won 2%, right? Because we're risking 1 to make 2, and we're up 1% overall. Now, what it says here is the way that asymmetric compounding works is you simply take all of the profit, and I'll show you guys different ways to take some of the profit, but in this example, we're going to take all the profit from this winning trade right here, and we're going to risk it plus our base risk on the next trade. So what does that mean? Well, it means that in this one trade here, we made 2%, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this 2% and we're going to add it to the 1% that we're already risking on this next trade. Because the next trade, we would risk 1% again, right? On trade 3. But instead, now instead of risking 1%, we're going to risk this 1% here that we normally risk plus what we just won, which is this 2%. So we're actually going to risk 3% here. And now since it's a 1 to 2 risk to reward, we're going to be risking 3% to make what? To make 6%. So the next trade, let's say that you win, boom. Just like that, you win 6% on the next trade, and now you're up 7% overall. So pretty cool how that works, right? Now you're probably thinking, in this exact moment, you're probably thinking, well, what if you had lost that one? You were risking 3% now instead of 1, and I'm going to go through that here in a second. But if you have 2 winning trades in a row, that's where this can really play out. So Then fourth trade, you're back to just risking 1% to make 2%. So you lose, let's say 1%. Fifth trade, you win. So you make the 2%. And then what are you going to do? You're going to take that 2% plus the 1% on this next trade. You're going to risk 3% on the next trade to make 6. And let's say you lose, then, well, you're going to lose that 3%, right? So you're back down to 5%. So this is an example, guys, of, 2 wins in a row, where obviously, you can see you can make a lot if you win that second trade. But if you lose the second trade after a win, then you're actually going to lose, more than you would have if you just risked the 1% on this trade, right? But obviously there's a lot of upside potential if you do win. So you would have made 5% overall in this situation. I just want to compare this to regular compounding, just another example here. Okay, this is the asymmetric compounding, we ended at 5% up here. If you had just done the regular compounding, you can see that you would have lost 1%, made 2%, made 2%, lost 1%, made 2%, lost 1%, right? So that's a total of 3% that you would have made. So compare those two. You would have made 5% with asymmetric compounding versus only 3% with this regular way of compounding. So pretty exciting stuff, right? So let's just talk through real quick here the different situations, right? So we're essentially doing this in sets of 2 trades here, right? So we're saying, like in this example, we're saying, hey, after you win 2 trades, just go back to the regular risking 1% to make 2% in this example, right? So we're not then taking the winnings from this second win, the whole 6% risking it on the third trade. Now you could do that, guys. It's actually totally an option, and you guys can have fun with that. And that could give you some really big gains. But the way that I'm just teaching you here is just simply doing it in kind of sets of 2 trades here, okay? So like I just explained, since we're looking at trades in sets of 2, I want to compare regular compounding with asymmetric compounding, completely apples to apples, and just show you how it really is a true edge in risk management. So we're using the same example of the 1 to 3 risk to reward right here, okay? So kind of back to that example, 1 to 3, meaning that, we're going to say you're risking 1% to make 3%, okay? So here's a table right here of sets of 2 trades. So if you go lose, obviously you would lose 1%. And then you would lose 1% again. So overall, you would lose 2% with that set of 2 trades, right? In this set, you would go lose-win. So you would lose the first one, lose 1%, win the second, you'd win 3%, so you would net 2%. This one, you would win 3%, and then you would just risk the 1% again, right? This is regular compounding, not asymmetric. So overall, you would just be up 2%. And then if you go win-win, same thing, you just win 3%, be up 6% overall. So comparing to asymmetric compounding, if you go lose-lose, it's also going to be minus 1% on both of those losses, right? Which would be negative 2% total. And lose-win is going to be the exact same, as you can see over here, as regular compounding, where you're going to lose 1%, and then you would make 3% if that's your set of 2, right? And then over here, this is where it makes a difference, guys. If you go win-lose on asymmetric compounding, where you're going to make that 3%, but then you're going to risk that 3% on your next trade, right? The 3% plus the 1% that you're risking. So you're going to risk 4% on the next trade. And if you lose that, then you lost 4% after just gaining 3. So you would net negative 1% there. But then if you go win-win, guys, this is where it makes the big difference. You would make 3%. You would risk that 3 plus the 1 on the next one. So you're risking 4% to make 12%. So between those 2 trades, you would make 15%. So you can see here the reason that it really gives you an edge and is really a good way of compounding your account is because the lose-lose and lose-win combo is the exact same on regular compounding and asymmetric compounding. The win-lose on regular compounding is plus 2%, and win-lose on asymmetric compounding is minus 1%. So not a huge difference, right? It's only a 3% difference there. But then if you go win-win on regular compounding, it's 6%. On asymmetric, it's 15%. So obviously the total, if you were to just add all these scenarios up that you, these sets of 2 that you have different combinations of over and over, the average is going to be 14% for asymmetric compounding and only 8% for regular compounding. Now, obviously, guys, this is actually a more aggressive way of doing this. It's more of a roller coaster because imagine, if you were going win-lose, win-lose, win-lose a bunch of times in a row, and you're like, man, I just can't catch a break. I'm going, minus 1% with all these sets of win-lose. Whereas if I had just been doing regular compounding, I'd be up 2% on every set of 2, with going win-lose. But then, all of a sudden, boom, you gain 15%. So it's like this just kind of emotional roller coaster of, you can go on kind of losing streaks or big winning streaks. And so it's just going to, definitely vary more. Whereas the more conservative way is less of a roller coaster, okay? And the way that you could be a little more conservative is instead of taking all of the profits from the winning trade, just take a little bit. So instead of taking, for example, the whole 3% on your winning trade and risking it on the next trade plus the 1%, so risking 4%, just take, for example, 1% from that 3% that you won. So, leave this 2% here. You made that 2%, only risk 1% plus the 1% you would risk, so risk 2%. And then if you do go win-lose, you're just going to break even. See how that works? So the downside to this is if you go win-win, you weren't risking the full 3% then on your next trade to make more. So instead of risking 3%, you're risking 2% on this next trade to make 6% instead of to make 12%, right? So then, you just go up 9% instead of 15% on a win-win trade. But you can see the difference there. Obviously that your win-lose, you're not going to lose 1% between that. You're just going to break even if you go win-lose. But if you go win-win, that's where it's really going to make a big difference. Obviously, this is still a great way to do it. Still gives you an edge of asymmetric compounding versus regular compounding and is a little bit less of a roller coaster. But, it's still not too bad of a roller coaster with only losing 1%. You just have to, be able to get through those streaks of, going win-lose, 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 and your account actually going down instead of, just breaking even or making 2% with regular compounding. So you just got to stick it out for the 2 wins in a row, and that's going to make a really big difference, and you'll be very excited, once that happens if you win 2 in a row. So anyway, guys, that's how asymmetric compounding works. I just want to show you guys one more thing. So I'm going to go over to the MT4 platform and show you one more thing real fast of just how you can implement this right now with the BSI tool, for example. So I just wanted to show you this. So you guys know that we have this calculator here in the upper right-hand corner for the BSI tool, which is really cool. And you can see you can just put in simply how much you want to risk. So, this is a $100,000 account. So let's say that I wanted to risk my 1%, right, to make 3%, let's say. So I'm going to risk 1%, and then I just need to put the number of pips to the stop loss. So let's just say, guys, that I was getting into a trade right here, okay, at the current price. And let's say that my stop loss was going to be, way up here. Okay, maybe that's a little far. Let's say it's above right here, okay, just to give you an example. So we'll just give it an even number and say it's at 30 pips, okay, that we want to put our stop loss. You can see, just by my cursor, it says 303 points, that's 30 pips. And this is usually how I like to just measure real fast how far it is to my stop loss is I just, grab this little tool here, the crosshairs, and then I come to, the current price, and I can just kind of draw it out to see about how far it is. That's just a quick way to do it. So 30 pips, let's say, is to my stop loss. And this is all obviously before I take the trade, right? You want to make sure you know where your stop loss is going to go before you take the trade so you can risk the right amount. So then you just type that in, the number of pips to the stop loss, and boom, it tells me based on my balance, I should risk, enter a lot size of 4.58 on this trade. And that means that if it goes against me and hits my stop loss 30 pips away, I'm going to lose exactly 1% of my account. So pretty cool how this works, right? And you can see exactly how you could use this with the asymmetric compounding pretty easily to calculate your risk each time. And then, as soon as you win a trade, let's say I won this trade, right? So I risked the 1%, made my 3%. Let's say I wanted to risk my 3% plus the 1% on the next trade. Well, then I'm going to be risking 4% to make that 12%, right? So let's say I had the exact same trade. Well, if I was risking 4% and my stop loss was 30 pips away, then my lot size would have to be 18.32 based on, my $100,000 balance here in order to risk 4%. And obviously, that's why trading with a bigger lot size means that there's also room for that upside potential of, if it does move with me and I make that 1 to 3 risk to reward on this 4% trade, well, I'm going to make 12% on that trade, which is awesome, right? So anyway, guys, just wanted to show you that real quick, just kind of how it works with the BSI tool. And hopefully this video helped you out. Hopefully this gets you excited about asymmetric compounding and just how quickly you could compound a small account to, a fairly large account. And you could also use this on larger accounts as well, right? So hopefully this helped you. And thanks so much, guys. I'll see you in the next video.